Morgan was 17 years old when she stepped off the transport ship and onto Station Velar 9. She stood in the docking bay with her single bag hanging from her shoulder and looked around at the massive space station that would be her home for the next 4 years. The walls curved upward in ways that made her dizzy. Strange lights in colors she had never seen before flickered along the ceiling. The air smelled like metal and something sweet that she could not name. She was one of the first human students ever accepted into the Galactic Academy. Back on Earth, people had called her brave. Her teachers had called her a pioneer. Her mother had cried at the shuttle station and told her to be careful. Her father had hugged her tight and whispered that he was proud of her. But standing here now, surrounded by aliens of every shape and size, did not feel brave. She felt very small and very alone. The year was 2247. Humanity had only been part of the Interstellar Coalition for 12 years. Most species in the galaxy still thought of humans as newcomers. They were the young ones, the primitive ones, the species that had barely figured out how to travel between stars, had read the reports before leaving Earth. She knew what the other species thought of her kind. Humans were too emotional. Humans were too aggressive. Humans were unpredictable and dangerous. They started wars over small things. They cried when they were sad and laughed when they were happy, and other species found this very strange. Most aliens kept their feelings hidden deep inside. They thought showing emotion was a sign of weakness. Walked through the docking bay and followed the signs toward the student registration office. Other students passed her in the corridor. A tall creature with skin like blue crystal looked down at her with 6 eyes and made a clicking sound. 2 insect-like beings with wings folded against their backs whispered to each other in a language her translator could not understand. A group of reptilian students with green scales and sharp teeth stopped talking when she walked by. They watched her with cold, yellow eyes until she turned the corner. No one smiled at her. No one said hello. No one offered to help her find her way. Had expected this. Her liaison officer, a tired man named Daniel Perry, had warned her many times before she left Earth. He had been working with aliens for 20 years, and he knew how they saw humans. Keep your head down, he had told her. Study hard. Do not make trouble. Do not draw attention to yourself. You are representing all of humanity out there. One mistake from you, and it could set back our diplomatic progress by decades. Had promised to be careful. She had promised to follow all the rules. She had promised to be the perfect student. But as she walked through those cold corridors with everyone staring at her like she was some kind of dangerous animal, she wondered if being perfect would be enough. The registration office was a large room filled with floating screens and busy workers. Waited in line behind a creature that looked like a giant spider with too many legs. When it was finally her turn, the officer behind the desk looked at her with obvious surprise. "You are the human," the officer said. It was not a question. "Yes," said, "my name is Morgan. I am here to register for classes." The officer typed something into a screen. The officer was one of the reptilian species that seemed to run most things in the coalition. They were old and powerful and did not like change. They especially did not like humans. "Your room assignment is in Sector 7, the officer said. "Your classes begin tomorrow at the first bell. Do not be late. Do not cause problems. Do you understand?" "I understand," said. The officer handed her a small device that would serve as her key, her schedule, and her identification. Took it and walked away without another word. Her room was small but clean. It had a bed that was slightly too short for her, a desk with a built-in computer and a window that looked out at the stars. Sat on the bed and stared at that window for a long time. Somewhere out there, millions of light years away, was Earth. Her home, her family, everything she had ever known. She would not see them again for 4 years. Unpacked her bag slowly. She had not brought much, some clothes, some books, a photo of her family that she placed on the desk where she could see it every morning, a small stuffed bear that her little brother had given her as a going-away present. She was too old for stuffed animals, but she had brought it anyway. It reminded her of home. The first bell rang the next morning and made her way to her first class. It was a basic course on galactic history, taught by an ancient professor whose crystalline body glowed with soft purple light. The classroom was large, with seats arranged in a circle around a central platform where the professor stood. Looked for an empty seat. There were many of them, but every time she moved toward one, the students nearby shifted away. They gathered their things. They moved to different seats. They made it very clear that they did not want her sitting near them. Finally, found a seat in the back corner where no one else was sitting. She sat down alone and took out her tablet to take notes. The professor began speaking about the formation of the coalition, about the great wars that had nearly destroyed the galaxy, about the peace treaties that had brought hundreds of species together. Listened carefully and wrote down everything. But she could feel eyes on her, watching, judging, waiting for her to do something wrong. At lunch, she went to the dining hall. It was a massive room filled with long tables and strange food from 100 different worlds. Got her tray and looked for a place to sit. Every table she approached fell silent. Students looked away. Conversation stopped. She ended up sitting alone at a small table in the corner. She ate her food slowly, trying not to let anyone see how much their rejection hurt her. She was human. She was supposed to be emotional, but she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. This was her life now, alone in a galaxy that did not want her, surrounded by beings who thought she was primitive and dangerous, fighting every day just to prove that she deserved to be here. Finished her lunch and walked back to her room. She had 3 more years and 51 more weeks of this ahead of her. She wondered if it would ever get easier. She wondered if anyone would ever look at her and see something other than a human. That night she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The station hummed around her, full of life and activity that she was not part of. She thought about her family back on Earth. She thought about Daniel Perry's warnings. She thought about all the species out there who hated her kind. And she made herself a promise. She would not give up. She would not let them break her. She would show them all that humans were more than what they thought. She just had to survive long enough to prove it. 3 weeks passed on Station Velar 9 and fell into a routine. She woke up early. She went to class. She ate alone. She studied in her room. She went to sleep. And then she did it all again the next day. Nothing changed. The other students still avoided her. The professors still looked at her with suspicion. The few times she tried to join study groups or talk to her classmates, they made excuses and walked away. She was still the human, still the outsider, still alone. But did not give up. She kept her head down and worked hard, just like Daniel Perry had told her to do. Her grades were good. Her behavior was perfect. She followed every rule and never caused any problems. On the 23rd day, something happened that changed everything. Had a free period between her afternoon classes. Most students used this time to study in the library or hang out with friends. Usually went back to her room, but today she felt restless. She had been inside for too long. She needed to walk, to explore, to see something new. She wandered through the station, following corridors she had never taken before. The academy was only one part of Velar 9. The rest of the station was a maze of maintenance tunnels, storage areas, and living quarters for the workers who kept everything running. Most students never went to these places. They were not forbidden, just forgotten. Walked deeper into the lower levels. The lights here were dimmer. The walls were older and covered with pipes and wires. The air was colder and smelled like oil and rust. She could hear the hum of machines working somewhere far away. She was about to turn back when she heard a sound. It was soft, almost too quiet to notice, a whimper like a small animal in pain. Stopped and listened. The sound came again, from somewhere to her left. She followed it down a narrow corridor until she reached a ventilation grate set into the wall near the floor. She knelt down and looked through the metal bars. There, curled up in the darkness behind the grate, was a small creature. It was about the size of a human child, maybe 6 or 7 years old. It had silver fur that was dirty and matted. Its body was thin, so thin that could see its ribs through its skin. Its eyes were golden and full of fear. Recognized the species from her studies. It was one of the warrior races that humans had learned about in their first contact briefings. They looked like wolves that walked on 2 legs. They were known for being fierce fighters and proud warriors. Their culture was based on strength and honor. But this one was just a cub, a baby, and it was clearly starving. "Hello," said softly, "are you okay?" The cub flinched at her voice and pressed itself against the back wall of its hiding space. It whimpered again and covered its face with its small paws. Did not move. She did not want to scare it more than she already had. "It is okay," she said. "I am not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The cub did not respond. It just kept shaking in the darkness. Stayed there for a long time, kneeling by the grate, speaking soft words that the cub probably could not understand. Finally, she stood up and walked away, but she could not stop thinking about what she had seen. That night, she used her computer to search for information. It took her hours to find what she was looking for, but eventually she pieced together the story. The cub's name was. His father had been a janitor at the academy, who had once been a soldier but had been disgraced and stripped of his rank. He had taken the only job he could find, cleaning floors and fixing pipes in the lower levels of the station. 2 months ago, he had died in an accident. A machine had failed. No one had been there to help him. Had no mother. She had died when he was very young. He had no other family, no clan, no one to take care of him. And in culture, that meant he was nothing. Read about the traditions with growing horror. They believed in strength above all else. The weak were meant to fail so that the strong could succeed. Orphans without sponsors, without family connections, without anyone to speak for them, were not given help. It was not cruelty in their eyes. It was simply the way things were. The strong survived. The weak did not. No one was going to help. He was supposed to die. Sat back in her chair and stared at the screen. Her hands were shaking. She felt sick to her stomach. She thought about the academy rules she had read before coming here. The coalition was made up of hundreds of species, each with their own customs and traditions. Interfering in another species' cultural practices was strictly forbidden. It was one of the most important laws in the galaxy. Every species had the right to live according to their own beliefs, even if other species found those beliefs strange or wrong. If tried to help, she would be breaking that law. She could be expelled. She could damage humanity's reputation in the coalition. She could undo everything that diplomats like Daniel Perry had worked so hard to build. But if she did nothing, a child would starve to death in the darkness, alone, forgotten, just because his father had died and no one thought he was worth saving. Closed her computer and lay down on her bed. She stared at the ceiling for hours, unable to sleep. The image of golden eyes kept appearing in her mind, so scared, so hopeless, so ready to give up. She thought about what Daniel Perry had told her. Keep your head down. Do not cause problems. Do not draw attention. She thought about her mother crying at the shuttle station. Be careful, her mother had said. She thought about all the species on this station who already hated humans, who thought they were too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous. And then she thought about what kind of person she wanted to be. Got out of bed and walked to her desk. She picked up the photo of her family and looked at their faces. Her mother, her father, her little brother. They had raised her to be kind, to help people who needed help, to stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. That was what it meant to be human. And no rule in the galaxy was going to change that. Made her decision. Tomorrow she would go back to the ventilation grate. She would find a way to help. She did not know how yet. She did not know what it would cost her. But she knew she could not walk away. She put the photo back on her desk and went to bed. For the first time in 3 weeks, she slept well. She knew what she had to do now. Tomorrow, everything would change. Woke up the next morning with a plan. Her meal card only allowed her 1 portion of food at each meal. She could not take extra from the dining hall without someone noticing, but she could save part of her breakfast, and she could save part of her lunch. If she ate less, she would have enough to share. She went to breakfast and took her usual tray: protein bars, synthetic fruit, a nutrient drink. She ate half of everything and wrapped the rest in a napkin. She put the napkin in her bag and walked out of the dining hall like nothing was different. During her free period, she went back to the lower levels. She walked through the same corridors until she found the ventilation grate. She knelt down and looked through the metal bars. Was still there. He had not moved. His golden eyes watched her with fear and suspicion. Did not say anything. She simply opened her bag and took out the food she had saved. She placed it on the floor and slid it through the gaps in the grate. Then she sat down with her back against the wall and took out the rest of her food. She began to eat, slowly, calmly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. For a long moment, nothing happened. Stayed pressed against the back wall of his hiding space. He stared at the food but did not move toward it. Kept eating. She did not look at him. She did not pressure him. She just sat there, sharing her meal with the air, acting like she did this every day. Finally, she heard movement, a soft scraping sound, a small paw reaching out. She glanced at the grate from the corner of her eye, had moved forward. His thin arm reached through the darkness and grabbed one of the protein bars. He pulled it back into the shadows and began to eat. Fast, desperate, like he had not eaten in days. Because he probably had not. Felt tears forming in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She could not let him see her cry. She did not want him to think something was wrong. She finished her food and stood up. She looked at the grate one more time. "I will come back tomorrow," she said softly. "Same time, okay?" Did not answer, but he did not run away either. Took that as a good sign. She walked back to class with her heart beating fast in her chest. She had done it. She had taken the first step. Now she just had to keep going. The next day she did the same thing, and the day after that, and the day after that. Every morning saved half her breakfast. Every afternoon she went to the ventilation grate during her free period. She brought food. She sat down. She ate her portion while ate his. She talked to him sometimes, just soft words about nothing important, the weather on Earth, the classes she was taking, the stars outside her window. Never talked back, but slowly, day by day, he began to change. By the end of the first week, he stopped pressing himself against the back wall. He sat closer to the grate now, close enough that could see his face clearly. His fur was still dirty, but his eyes were brighter, less afraid. By the end of the second week, he started to eat more slowly. He was not starving anymore. He knew that food would come again tomorrow. He did not have to rush. Noticed other changes too. His ribs were less visible. His fur was starting to look healthier. He sat up. He watched her with curiosity instead of fear. One day, near the end of the second week, was reading from her history homework out loud. She often did this, just to fill the silence. She was talking about some old war between 2 species she had never heard of when she heard a sound that made her stop. Had laughed. It was a small sound, barely more than a breath, but it was there. Looked at him through the grate and saw something that made her heart swell. He was smiling. "What is funny?" she asked. Shook his head. "Nothing," he said. His voice was soft and rough, like he had not used it in a long time. "You say the name wrong." Blinked. "What name?" "The species. You say it like the, but it is T." Laughed. "Sorry, I am still learning." Smiled again. "It is okay. Humans are new." It was the first real conversation they had. It was not much, just a few words about pronunciation, but it meant everything. After that, started talking more. He told about his father, about how he used to carry on his shoulders through the maintenance corridors, about the stories he used to tell before bed, about the day he did not come home. Listened to everything. She did not interrupt, she did not offer advice, she just listened. And when cried, she reached through the grate and held his small paw in her hand. She held it until he stopped shaking, until his tears dried, until he fell asleep with his fingers wrapped around hers. 2 weeks of secret meetings, 2 weeks of shared meals and quiet conversations, 2 weeks of watching a dying cub come back to life. Knew it could not last forever. She knew that someone would find out eventually, but she pushed that thought away. Right now, all that mattered was making sure he survived another day. She did not know that a cleaning drone had been recording them. She did not know that the footage was already making its way through the station's security systems. She did not know that her secret was about to be exposed. On the 15th day, went to her usual meeting spot during her free period, but when she arrived, was not there. She called his name, no answer. She looked through the grate into the empty darkness. Her heart began to pound. Where was he? Had something happened? Had someone taken him? She was about to go looking for him when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around. 3 security officers stood in the corridor. Their yellow eyes were cold and hard. Their hands rested on the weapons at their belts. Morgan, one of them said, "You will come with us." Looked at the empty grate one more time. Then she straightened her shoulders and faced the officers. "Where is she?" asked. The officer did not answer. He just pointed down the corridor. Walk. Walked. She did not know where they were taking her. She did not know what was going to happen. But she knew one thing for certain. She did not regret a single thing she had done. Whatever came next, she would face it, for herself, for everything that being human meant. She just hoped she would get a chance to see him again. The hearing chamber was the largest room had ever seen on Station Velar 9. It was built in a circle with rows of seats rising up toward the ceiling like a stadium. Hundreds of beings filled those seats. Students, professors, diplomats, officials, they had all come to watch. To watch her. Stood alone in the center of the room on a small platform. There was no chair, no table, nothing to hide behind, just her standing under bright lights while the entire galaxy looked down at her. At the front of the room sat the tribunal, 3 beings on raised seats looking at her like she was a criminal. And maybe in their eyes she was. The one in the center was High Counselor N, with old scales that had turned gray with age. He had scars on his face from battles fought long before was born. His yellow eyes watched her without blinking, without emotion, without mercy. To his left sat Professor, one of the crystalline beings who taught at the academy. Had never had a class with her, but she knew the professor by reputation. She was fair. She followed the rules. She would not help today. To his right sat the being that feared most. Ambassador he was massive, almost twice height, with thick gray fur and muscles that bulged under his ceremonial armor. Gold medals hung from his chest. His golden eyes burned with anger. His people had sent their highest representative, and he had not come to defend. The room fell silent as High Counselor and raised his hand. "We are here today," he said, his voice booming through the chamber to address the actions of the human student known as Morgan. She has been charged with cultural interference, violation of non-intervention protocols, and disrespect toward traditions. These are serious charges. The punishment, if she is found guilty, is immediate expulsion from this academy and a formal complaint filed against Earth's diplomatic corps. Heard whispers from the crowd. She kept her eyes forward. She would not let them see her fear. The counselor turned to look at her. "Do you understand these charges?" "I understand," said. Her voice did not shake. She made sure of that. Good, then let us proceed. For the next hour, listened as they presented the evidence against her. The drone footage, the security reports, statements from other students who had seen her going to the lower levels. Everything was laid out in cold, precise detail. She had broken the rules. There was no question about that. The only question was what would happen next. When the evidence was finished, Ambassador rose from his seat. He walked to the center of the room and stood before. Up close, he was even bigger than she had thought. His shadow fell over her like a mountain blocking the sun. "Human," he said. His voice was a deep growl that made translator struggle to keep up. "Do you know what you have done?" "I helped a child who was starving," said. "You interfered with our ways. The do not ask for help. We do not accept charity. The weak are meant to fall so that the strong may rise. This is how it has always been. This is how it must be." He pointed a clawed finger at her. "Your actions are an insult to my people. You looked at one of our cubs and decided that your human morality was more important than thousands of years of our traditions. You decided that you knew better than us, that your way was right and our way was wrong." Felt her heart pounding, but she did not look away. Ambassador continued, "Humans have been in this galaxy for barely more than a decade. You know nothing of our history. You know nothing of our struggles. You come here with your soft hearts and your loud emotions, and you think you can judge us. You think you can save us." He leaned closer, his teeth showing. "You cannot, and you will learn that today." He turned to the tribunal. "I demand that this human be expelled immediately. I demand that her government apologize for her actions, and I demand that the cub be returned to our custody, where his fate will be decided according to our laws." Felt cold, returned to their custody. That meant would be sent back to the streets, back to starving, back to dying. She could not let that happen. The counselor looked at, "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Took a deep breath. She thought about everything she had learned in the past few weeks, about culture, about coalition law, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that did not understand them. And then she spoke. "I am not going to apologize," she said. The crowd murmured. Ambassador's eyes narrowed. "I know I broke the rules," continued. "I know that I was not supposed to interfere. I know that your traditions are important to you, and I know that I am just a human, a newcomer, someone who does not belong here. But I also know what I saw. I saw a child dying, alone, in the dark. I saw a little boy who had lost his father and had no one left to care for him. And I saw a galaxy that was going to let him die because that was the tradition." She looked at Ambassador. "You say that the weak must fall so the strong can rise. You say that this is how it has always been. But I do not believe that strength comes from letting children starve. I do not believe that honor comes from turning away from those who need help. On Earth, we used to believe in things like that too. We used to let people die because they were poor or different or alone. We used to tell ourselves that it was natural, that it was the way of things. And every time we did that, we became less than what we could be." His voice grew stronger, "Is not weak. He survived for months on his own. He did not give up. He did not stop fighting. He just needed someone to see him, to help him, to give him a chance. That is not weakness. That is strength. The strength to keep going when everything is against you. The strength to hope when there is no reason to hope." She looked around the chamber at all the faces watching her. "I do not know if what I did was right according to your laws, but I know it was right according to mine. And if that means I have to leave this academy, then I will leave. But I will not say I was wrong, because helping someone who is suffering is never wrong." The chamber was silent. No one moved, no one spoke. Stood there, alone under the lights, and waited. Ambassador stared at her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned to the tribunal. "This human is arrogant," he said. "She thinks her morality is superior to ours. She thinks she can come into our galaxy and change the way things work." He paused, and perhaps she is right to think so. The crowd gasped, blinked in surprise, turned to face the assembly. I was a soldier once. I fought in wars that this human has never heard of. I watched cubs die on battlefields because we did not have enough food to save them all, and I told myself it was the way of things. His voice softened, but I have also watched our people become hard, cold. We have forgotten what it means to care for each other. We have forgotten that strength is not just about surviving. It is about what you do with your survival. He looked at, this human saw something we had stopped seeing. She saw a child worth saving, and she had the courage to act when we did not. Ambassador turned back to the tribunal. I withdraw my demands. Let the human stay. Let the cub be placed in her care if she will have him, and let us think about what kind of people we want to be. Felt tears running down her face. She did not try to hide them this time. The counselor looked at her, then he looked at, then he nodded. This tribunal is suspended, he said. We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss the path forward. The crowd began to murmur, stood frozen on her platform, not quite believing what had just happened. She had won, but more importantly had won. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had won too. The day after the tribunal was called to the Academy's administrative office. She walked through the corridors with her heart beating fast, not knowing what to expect. The decision had been suspended. That did not mean it was over. But when she arrived, she found something she had not expected. Was there? He was sitting on a chair that was too big for him, his small legs dangling above the floor. His silver fur had been cleaned and brushed. He wore new clothes, simple but warm, and when he saw, his face lit up with the biggest smile she had ever seen. He shouted. He jumped off the chair and ran to her. She knelt down and caught him in her arms. She held him tight, feeling his small body pressed against hers, feeling his arms wrapped around her neck. I thought I would never see you again, whispered. I am here, said. I am not going anywhere. The administrator, a tall with purple crystal skin, watched them with an expression that might have been curiosity, or perhaps something more. Morgan, the administrator, said, the tribunal has reached a decision. You will not be expelled. Looked up, still holding, what about him? That is why you are here. Ambassador has proposed something unusual, a pilot program for cross-species adoption. It has never been done before. The legal process will take time, but if you agree, can be placed in your care as your dependent while you complete your studies here. Felt her heart stop. You mean I can keep him? If you accept the responsibility, yes. Looked down at, his golden eyes were wide with hope, with fear, with everything he had been holding back for so long. What do you think? She asked him. Do you want to stay with me? Nodded more than anything. Smiled and pulled him closer. Then I accept. The paperwork took weeks. There were forms to sign and interviews to complete and questions to answer. Diplomats from both Earth and the had to approve every step. Daniel Perry called almost every day, sometimes to help and sometimes just to shake his head in disbelief. You were supposed to keep your head down, he said during one of their calls. I know, said, I am sorry. No, he paused. No, you are not. And you know what? I am glad you are not. What you did was the most human thing anyone has done out here in 12 years. The news spread across the galaxy faster than could have imagined. The footage of the tribunal was broadcast on every major network. Billions of beings watched a 17-year-old human girl stand up for a starving cub and refuse to back down. They watched Ambassador, one of the most powerful in the coalition, admit that maybe his people had been wrong. The reaction was mixed. Some species praised. They called her brave and kind and everything that was good about humans. Other species criticized her. They said she had overstepped, that she had interfered in matters that were not her business, that humans were just as arrogant as everyone feared. But something else happened too, something quieter, something more important. On the Young people began to protest. They demanded changes to the old laws. They demanded better care for orphans. They demanded that strength be measured not by who survived, but by who helped others survive. The old leaders tried to silence them, but the protests only grew louder. Learned about all of this from the news. She did not feel like a revolutionary. She just felt like a girl who had done what was right. Years passed. Grew up on Station Vealer 9, raised by a human girl who became his sister in every way that mattered, helped him with his homework. She taught him to cook human food. She held him when he had nightmares about his father. She cheered for him at every school event. He was not an easy child. He had scars that went deeper than anyone could see, but was patient. She was kind. She was there. And slowly, day by day, healed. He turned out to be brilliant. Once he had food and safety and someone who believed in him, his mind opened up like a flower in the sun. He excelled in science and math. He learned languages faster than anyone had ever seen. His professors said he had potential that they rarely saw in students of any species. Watched him grow with pride that filled her entire heart. When was 18, he graduated from the Galactic Academy as its first valedictorian. It was the highest honor any student could receive. No one from his species had ever achieved it before. The graduation ceremony was held in the same chamber where it had been put on trial years earlier. The same seats, the same lights, the same hundreds of beings watching. But this time, they were not watching. They were watching. He stood at the podium in his graduation robes, tall and strong, his silver fur gleaming under the lights, sat in the front row with tears streaming down her face, looked out at the crowd and began to speak. "I stand here today because of many things," he said. "Hard work, good teachers, a little bit of luck, but mostly I stand here because 11 years ago, a human girl saw me dying in the darkness and decided that I was worth saving." He paused. She did not know me. She did not owe me anything. She knew that helping me would get her in trouble, but she did it anyway, because that is who humans are. They see suffering and they cannot look away. Looked at, she gave him a shaky smile through her tears. "I used to wonder why she did it," he continued. "I used to think maybe she wanted something. Maybe she was trying to prove a point. Maybe she just felt sorry for me, but now I understand. She did it because she could not imagine doing anything else." He addressed the crowd again. "I have learned many things at this academy, science, history, politics, but the most important thing I learned came from a 17-year-old girl who shared her lunch with a starving cub. She taught me that kindness is not weakness, compassion is not foolishness, and one person acting alone can change the entire galaxy." His voice grew stronger. "I know that many species still do not understand humans. They think humans are too emotional, too impulsive, too soft, but I have seen what that softness can do. It saved my life. It gave me a future. It showed me that I matter." Stood taller. So here is what I want to say to everyone listening today. Never underestimate what one human is willing to do for a stranger, because that stranger might turn out to be me. And I am living proof that sometimes the smallest kindness can reshape the universe. The chamber erupted in applause. Stood up with everyone else, clapping until her hands hurt, crying until she could barely see. After the ceremony, found her in the crowd. He wrapped his arms around her, and she wrapped her arms around him, and for a long moment they just held each other. "Thank you," whispered, "for everything." Smiled, "You do not have to thank me. You are my brother. I would do it all again." They walked out of the chamber together, side by side, the human girl and the boy who had become a man. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered and began to understand something new about the strange species called humanity. They were emotional. They were unpredictable. They were soft in ways that other species could not understand. But they were also kind, brave, stubborn in their refusal to let others suffer. And maybe, just maybe, That was exactly what the galaxy needed. Looked up at the stars through the station windows. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, her family, the place where she had learned what it meant to be human. She squeezed his hand. "Come on," she said, "let us go home." And together they walked into the future.